So Ruben Amorim has received the most public support from the hierarchy to date, with a continued vision of progress towards Project 150. We are looking into every little bit of that conversation, including separate reports of a potential sale and as many of your questions as I have time for. This is your latest installation of the Theatre of Red. How is everything with you on this day? As always, thank you for taking the time to tune into the show this week. I hope it's been a good one so far for you and yours. So, in this unique world of Manchester United, it's been a relatively good one so far. I think it's fair to say. The players are now obviously embarking on a second international break off the back of a promising performance and win against high-flying Sunderland. That, of course, extends Ruben Amorim's winning Premier League run at Old Trafford to 3, while positioning United only 3 points outside of the European places. Interestingly, it's only 4 off the Champions League spots and 6 off the top, if you can believe that, Reds. Now, it does not mean that everything is rosy, and we should not forget the worrying facts that stand side by side with all of this. But as I've regularly stated on this show and across site and socials, contrary to these jaded reports from would-be journalists, you are allowed to enjoy 3 points as a United supporter. It's not naughty and you're not doing anything wrong. And it doesn't make you odd for being happy when we beat Sunderland. Because make no mistake, despite the lack of reports damning Amorim's tactics or his philosophy afterwards, you would have been absolutely inundated with all of this had the result gone the other way. So, by all means, enjoy a win and the lack of nonsense being spewed across social media, even if it is only for a few hours. Naturally, given that it is an international break, a period where the majority of football clubs are generally rewarded with a little period of quiet, Manchester United are never afforded this. From speculative transfer reports or conversations about contracts and whatnot, I think it's fair to say that there's always something rearing its head. However, the very public words of Jim Ratcliffe have dominated the talking points since Wednesday evening, effectively putting many of these tiresome reporters back in their boxes. Throughout the years, I have learned to never assume that everybody is up to speed on matters. So for your benefit, if you have not read or heard the quotes, I will clarify the main statement. As we know, Radcliffe is a very public-facing guy. He holds vested interest naturally in several public-facing companies. And he spent some time with the business podcast from the Times, discussing a variety of his own matters. However, the fundamental line in the sporting perspective from his discussions about Manchester United related to what was essentially a pledge to provide Ruben Amorim with 3 years to prove himself as a great coach. Those were his words at the football club. He did acknowledge that he has not had the best of seasons. Radcliffe also stated that Ruben was a good guy and, quote, he needs to demonstrate that he is a great coach over 3 years. That's where I would be. He was then probed about whether or not the Portuguese coach would be given the time. And he stated it's 3 years. You also look at Arteta at Arsenal, and he had a miserable time over the first couple of years. The press, sometimes I don't understand. They want overnight success. They think it's a light switch. You flick a switch and it's all going to be roses tomorrow. You can't run a club like Manchester United on knee-jerk reactions to some journalist who goes off on one every week. And additionally, then, interestingly as well, when he was asked what would happen if the Glazers had told him to sack Amorim, he was adamant in declaring that it is not going to happen. As a journalist and writer who has dedicated the better part of the last decade, whether working on regional or national political stories or nationwide news here in Ireland, down to my sports reporting from grassroots to the Irish domestic game and then on to the Premier League with Manchester United, it is my humble opinion, despite the bizarre take that I'm reading of some, that Jim had little to nothing to gain from this statement. And contrary to the viewpoint of some largely followed Twitter accounts, I don't believe that there's anything cryptic in them either. If you don't already know, Everyone here at the Theatre of Red is committed to attempting to deliver quality over quantity. That's something we stand by. None of us have any interest in clickbait or popping notifications on Twitter about national writers so we can then take their article and reword it as our own. But as we published midway through September, our sources confirmed the Ineos hierarchy was supportive of the former sporting man and mainly his ambitions in the Northwest, that they aligned with their own, and that suggestions about dressing room dissatisfaction were widely inaccurate. Every concrete report that has landed since then, and up to Jim's comments on Wednesday, it verifies every word that we have previously stated. I received numerous emails throughout Wednesday evening in relation to the comments that Radcliffe said, naturally with the majority of them. And when I said a majority, I mean 98 out of 100 sort of majority were applauding the public confirmation and welcoming what was a dig in the face to the many speculative reports the public are regularly spoon-fed. John Higgins from Blarney wanted to know my take on Radcliffe's words and how I felt about the general fallout of what we would inevitably see. Now, I'm paraphrasing with that because John asked me to do so rather than reading out what he had wrote in. Firstly, obviously, thanks for taking the time to get in touch, sir. I hope that you have overcome Crow Park and a premier moment in time, but I really appreciate the support, so thank you. I think naturally, this is a significant show of support for Amorim, first and foremost. But it's not as clear-cut as saying that he's guaranteed his position for 3 years, regardless of performance, results, and progression. That's the main thing. Because he will need to develop a comprehensive understanding of the players, the system, and also weekly performances, while ensuring that the fan base remains aligned with everything that goes on. Remember, you, me, we're all customers. And if the product fails, the end goal is compromised. Jim's statement was never going to be universally accepted because the fan base is fractured by a lack of progress, as well as the scars of last season and the perennial fallout of mismanagement, constant change at the coaching level, all of this. Also, by the words of a jaded media that by and large will do their best to maximise carnage in and around Old Trafford because, in case you don't know, controversy and sensationalism generally sell. You can't forget the social aspect in all of this either, and accounts that thrive on notoriety. I mean, Jesus Christ, all you have to do is look at the one-time superpower in Sky and see what they've reverted to and the calibre of Manchester United supporter that they routinely introduce to speak on behalf of the fan base. So unless I'm not being clear here, people, they certainly don't speak on my behalf, that's for sure. In general, I'm not surprised by the information because it aligns with the majority of what we have published already. But the fact that he has done so publicly and with complete disregard for the reporters who do their best to push their narrative, well, I absolutely adore this. These quotes, they simply amplify the ongoing suggestion about long-term planning, an ideal to achieve the club's Project 150, and I think ultimately an agreed understanding that the hierarchy is trying to return United to its rightful position alongside a young coach who can sit in the hot seat for the foreseeable future. Ineos, for whatever you think of them, appears hell-bent on maintaining their plan. And that is despite short-term unsatisfactory results, because make no mistake, that's exactly what they are. I'm not ignoring how poor things have been. But they will not be slavishly steered towards an unwanted platform by media-driven optics. And I continue to mention the media because this is a man, a billionaire, who went out of his way on that podcast to state that you can't run a club like Manchester United off the back of knee-jerk reactions from some journalist going off on one every single week. Whether you are listening today as someone who agrees with me, or somebody who has had enough of Amorim and believes that he is unsuitable, make no mistake, I understand that that is your belief and you are absolutely entitled to it. Still, you're surely happy to see ownership disregard bullshit, pardon my French, that's being spewed by every Tom, Dick and Harry for a click, regardless of what side of the fence you stand on. However, I do acknowledge that there is another side to this podcast appearance, and that's namely Radcliffe's decision to speak publicly about the Glazers and what appears to be his admiration for the family. Steve Brandy from Stamford referred to this specifically in an email, saying, "How can you, me or any other supporter get behind a man who is happy to associate himself with these Americans and have us believe that they are good people, the club's best at their hearts. For me, it is unforgivable. Now, for what it's worth, Steve, I agree totally. I couldn't get behind anybody who was supportive of that family and the damage that they have caused Manchester United and the fan base. You can paint it whatever way you choose, but they have raped this football club publicly, and they continue to fly around in their private jets off the back of the cancer that they have caused in the Northwest. For me, I think I'm attempting to look at this situation as pragmatically as I possibly can. And I believe that Jim is still trying to buy the club off the Americans. Now, naturally, bashing their character and diminishing their worth as businessmen publicly, it probably isn't the best way to go about flirting with them in any potential deal. You must remember that he also referenced the level of incompetence that has been met, altered, and reformatted behind the scenes at the club. And as we all know, that is a direct result of the mismanagement provided by the Glazers over 2 decades. I assure you that, contrary to the words of some, I am not a vessel or a mouthpiece for this ownership. But to be perfectly frank, I would be genuinely dumbfounded if this man believed an ounce of what he was saying publicly about the Glazers and their ability to run the football club while keeping the best interest of United at heart, because their actions since arriving scream nothing but the opposite of that. We're all aware of this. I do believe that change requires proper planning. And I also believe that the challenge of ousting this parasite from Old Trafford takes time. It takes effort, and to portray enough respect to consider the possibility of parting company in the first place. Jim referenced his beliefs that United will once again become the most profitable club in football. And for me, it's always been as simple as understanding that the most juvenile of business mind, with a hint of understanding about something as simple as tying their shoelaces in the morning, would have enough about them to make this football club profitable. You got to remember, this is Manchester United. It's a one-time printing press for cash that has been ripped apart, having leveraged nearly 2 billion onto the shoulders of history. But you know this, and I know this, and just to perfectly summarize it, I would be flabbergasted if a walking, talking billionaire was not more than a little clued in about the carnage that this family has caused and the necessary steps required to pry United out of their greedy, filthy hands.
Those days of skipping school and football in the park, lads chasing all the girls, then heading home for dark. Those days, my friend,
If you are a regular listener here at the Theatre of Red, you've probably heard me discuss Red News and our goal to contribute to the ongoing production of this wonderful fan culture. And today, as a proud contributor to the mag, I am asking you to get involved. Reason being, we want you to get chatting, share your thoughts on what you're reading, and to let us know what you'd like to see in the future. Barney and the gang are crying out for those great United tales, those stories, the ones hidden away, the funny incidents, the cherished family memories. Red News wants to hear them. So if you have something that you feel Barney, me, any of the guys or the Manchester United fan base would like to read, then just get in touch and get writing. And also, don't be afraid to say hello at the games. I assure you none of the boys will bite, I promise. But remember, deep down, this fanzine is made for supporters just like you, like me. It's a fanzine about us. So get involved and keep Red News exactly where it needs to be. Everything you need will be in the bio. And my friend, the rest is up to you. We've spoken about Amorim, about the Glazers, and we've just had that message about Red News. But what about these reports of an impending sale of the football club? Now, if you haven't heard anything about that, as of late Wednesday night, Turki al-Sheikh, a Saudi government minister who's the head of the Entertainment Authority tasked with bringing some of the world's most sought-after sporting events to Saudi Arabia, well, he only went and set supporters alight with the following tweet. He said, "The happiest news I heard today is that Manchester United is now in an advanced stage of finalising a deal to sell to a new investor. I hope they're better than the previous owners." Well, The conspiracy theorist in me could look at Jim's public comments, specifically those relating to a return of financial dominance, and also those of Cristiano Ronaldo about aspirations owning a major football club and to manufacture a David Beckham-like pursuit in Miami here. You know where I'm going with that. However, I can tell you now that I have nothing to offer from this perspective. My sources, which have been proven accurate on many, many occasions, they're unaware of anything regarding this tweet. As we know, Ineos can do nothing about the Americans selling the club since that 18-month period expired on August the 13th. So therefore, technically, the Glazers could be in talks with potential buyers without any of the aforementioned parties knowing about it. And this would also not affect the public-facing requirements because they would only be talks people. That said, I have no intention of dragging this out or providing nonsense to make myself seem more credible than I am. Still, it was important for me to address this because if I didn't, what would I be? And I had to let you know that I am just as in the dark about this one as I should be. But Thomas Parker from Liverpool reached out about last weekend's game and what he perceived as a sign of changing times. Got in touch via email, and just again, that is editor@theatre-of-red.com. Hello from Liverpool, Shaun. I'm a lifelong United supporter from an Irish family raised in the wrong city up north. Love what you guys are doing and the focus you put on Amorim and his system. Given what we saw against Sunderland, do you see the man changing his beliefs to accommodate the continued pressure he is under? Well, hello, Thomas, my Irish brother. It is great to connect with you. In short, I would say no. I don't believe that he will change his beliefs for anybody. But then that stems from my understanding of what he's trying to achieve. To elaborate, I'll presume that you've been listening to what I've reported over his tenure and how we are witnessing the metamorphosis of the dressing room. I genuinely believe that he is trying to shape an understanding of a combined vision that will lead to a group of players capable of playing the game in a certain way without needing explicit instructions from the touchline and with the ability to interchange in the field, just like breathing. I think it all stems from when we see him at his most emotional with the media, highlighting how the formation has so little to do with the issues. This is more about a combined understanding that leads to the culture at the football club, the unified belief of what we are trying to achieve. And then that leads to the interchangeability on the football field. I think whether he starts with 3 or 4 at the back shouldn't matter because the sole requirements will see players act in varying ways, whether in defence, in transition, and in attack. But the main draw is that the players will not be defined by the media's interpretations of set systems and structure. This is something I speak about regularly. And I actually emphasised it last week with Daryl. Forget the visuals about tactic boards or formations against Grimsby, for example, because any 11 Manchester United players should beat that team without a manager or a coach present. And I know that might come across as obnoxious, but I don't say it disrespectfully. It's the same as if any 11 players from Madrid, Barcelona, or Bayern were playing them, because the same would be attributed to those players. And that all comes down to cultural philosophy and an understanding of where you are and the minimum requirements of a player who is fortunate enough to put on that jersey. I know that we've seen visuals of players setting into a back four at times against Sunderland, but to me that is more about a growing belief in what the manager is trying to achieve. It's not so much about changing where a player stands in the field at any given time, rather a player understanding that they need to give everything and more during each and every game. And I think the more that a player buys into this, the more fluidity that we'll see every single week. I feel that is what Amorim wants to achieve. And it's important that you forget the level of opposition in Portugal. But that is what we saw from Sporting when they played the likes of Benfica or Porto, or when they ventured into continental competitions. I will say at this point as well, of course, the coaching is obviously imperative. Otherwise, you could say, what is the point of Amorim at all? But outside of the standard tactical approaches that are implemented midweek, so much of this, specifically at Manchester United, it's a psychological venture. It's about individual growth that will inevitably translate to the field. You must remember, all of these players are extremely talented because they wouldn't be at the football club otherwise. So I do believe that Amorim is open to multiple approaches mid-game. but the type of player that he wants to select will not deviate because this embodies the desired philosophy. I think a prime example of this is that you will see much more when Martinez returns, because the likes of that player carries the ball from deep into a low-lying midfield position, and that will in turn resemble a back four with an extra man occupying midfield. Realistically, I could probably apply the same to Yarrow with his ball carrying, and even to De Ligt in recent times with the improvements that he has made with his ball carrying and even his distribution. Because ultimately, as helter-skelter as things become, I really don't think that we're as far off where we need to be as many do. I mean, that said, we need results to back this up, but where better to start than against Liverpool after the break? Because I don't think anyone listening would disagree that it would be pretty sweet to get that back-to-back win at Anfield. I just think it's about time, it's about composure, philosophy, and understanding. And I didn't believe that everything else will fall into place. I hope that I have done that justice, Thomas. So be sure and drop me an email or get in touch on social media and let me know. But there is one final thing that I want to make public knowledge today, as best as I can. And it's circulating the upcoming winter work of the Manchester United Foundation. This is something that is obviously very close to my heart. It's a cause that we have publicly supported at the Theatre of Red with the foundation for some time through the likes of Nathan Thomas and most recently with David May. Just like earlier on, I won't assume, for those unaware, the Manchester United Foundation utilises football to engage with communities. And they get out there. They look to spend as much time as they possibly can with young people to guide and to help inspire choices that will ultimately enhance a better life for every single person that gets involved. And in fairness, what an outstanding charity that is, people. Firstly, the foundation is openly appealing for donations of both clean adult and children's coats at Old Trafford. And the whole idea about this is to support local families in need throughout the upcoming winter and beyond with the most basic of requirements, just a coat. But the initiative is nothing new because there's been over 4,000 coats donated over the last 2 years. And naturally, that's aiding fellow human beings, people. It's aiding fellow human beings during a typically difficult time of the year when the weather just gets so Baltic. This year, you can donate during the men's fixture with Brighton on Saturday, the 25th of October. I think it's just, a little over 2 weeks' time. And also at the women's team's Champions League meeting with Paris Saint-Germain. And that's on Wednesday, the 12th of November. All donations will be accepted from 90 minutes before the first whistle. And every single coat received is going to be donated to those in need who either access foundation projects and partner schools, as well as several identified poverty charities in Manchester. But they don't just stop there. The club is going to host the 4th stadium sleepout at Old Trafford, and that's providing further support and incentive for underprivileged young people in Greater Manchester. This is a topic that David May discussed on a previous episode, and the club is inviting you to get involved on Friday, the 7th of November. And it's a unified vision to raise funds and awareness about the ongoing hardships faced by so many, just like the coats. And it's all focusing on the hardships that are faced every single winter. The only thing that is asked is that if you are aiming to get involved, that you will pledge to raise £250 in sponsorship fees. And then all of those funds will go towards the foundation and their work to support all of the vital services for the young people. Now, we put together an article on both of these topics during the week. We covered all of the places, the websites and the links to visit for more information and also for registration. Now, I'm going to put the link to that article in the bio, and you're all welcome to get involved if you wish. Just realize there is nothing for me to gain anything from with this. There's nobody patting me on the back for this. I'm not looking for that. But I would ask you all to seriously consider the great help that you can provide with something so very small, and ultimately recognize what an absolutely superb group of people every single one of those people in the Manchester United Foundation are. And on that, I think it's pretty fitting to say goodbye for another week. Thank you all very much again for your time. As always, I will ask you one thing. Would you mind liking and subscribing wherever you are listening today? And if you can leave a quick review as well, each one obviously means the world. You can continue sending your emails through to editor@theatre-of-red.com and continue getting in touch on our socials. Of course, I'm going to be back to you all next week to catch up on whatever else rears its head. Until then, stay safe. Thank you for your time once more, and enjoy the rest of the week and the weekend.